All right. I wrote down a few notes for what I was thinking about when I looked at the deck, which is something I think we should talk about before. Let's see. Let me pop this out. So we're going to be discussing this Temur Underworld Breach deck. It's a fair deck, of course. I know you've been working on it with Mason some already, so I think a lot of the work has already been done, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm not like sold on anything, which is why I feel like there's a lot of potentially weird numbers in it. But yeah, Mason and I have talked about it, and then after Jesse and Andrew played the Energy Championships, I got some more ideas on how to be building it.
Yeah, I when I looked at it, I kind of feel like it was built backwards instead of forwards, if that makes sense from an engineering perspective. Because
Um,
it's kind of difficult to get to one spire above canal unless you build backwards instead of forwards.
sure.
Yeah, I mean obviously that's not an inherent criticism of the deck directly, but I do think there's some things that should be questioned about the mana base. Like what are your goals with the mana base? Heck, like it's very weird to see three Tarmogoyf as well is another way of putting it, you know.
Yeah.
But I basically think there's a bunch of questions we should ask about the deck. Um, so someone, I guess maybe you have a similar question. What does it mean to build backwards instead of forwards? I think building backwards means you take an existing deck and modify it to this. Building forward means you come up with the idea and just start putting things in. So that's what I mean. It's sort of top bottom versus bottom top design. And I'm not sure how exactly you got to this point. I guess that's kind of an interesting question as well.
Yeah, so I was actually I was thinking about making a fair breach deck. I wasn't really in love with Jeskai, which was running around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I found the White Splash to be not super exciting, and just kind of there are a lot of issues. Like the deck was really bad at hitting its land drops in my experience, and
Mm-hmm.
like the deck just wants to hit its land drops. So basically, my idea was, why don't you just make Fair Breach with Wrenn, which is one of the best cards in the format, and then it kind of helps you hit your land drops every turn, which is like kind of a really big deal with this deck. And so I kind
Mm-hmm.
of was fiddling with just basically lists and ideas, and like nothing was like too set.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then had some like really rough drafts. And then after Jesse posted, it got a little bit more clean because I was
Mm-hmm.
able to steal some of their more refined ideas from the list. I found that one of the big selling points to me was playing Urza Saga and Goyf,
Mm-hmm.
just because it feels like this deck wants a higher threat density. And the big benefit of Goyf with Urza Saga, it's really easy to go turn one green source, turn two Urza Saga, Tarmogoyf. And in my experience, Tarmogoyf actually plays well with Underworld Breach,
Mm-hmm.
where most other cards that are graveyard reliant play kind of bad with Underworld Breach. Like Murktide and Underworld Breach don't really go very well together. But Tarmogoyf, you want to be
Mm-hmm.
filling your graveyard, and if you breach and then reset, your opponent still has all their cards in their graveyard, and then
Mm-hmm.
typically you're refilling it with enough small random things that it really is not such a big deal. So I found that Tarmogoyf was actually just really good as being a threat that worked pretty well with the mana.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. When I played Jund Saga before, I had a similar experience. Also, Saga just makes Tarmogoyf enormous as well when it
Yeah.
dies, which is obviously one of the more appealing things about the deck. With regards to the mana base, I really want to harp on this point because I think it is
Yeah.
important. Okay, I think there's a few things that I find very peculiar. I think the Spirebluff Canal is a sore thumb for me. Not playing Misty Rainforest and Island, I think, is also kind of weird to me, but maybe it's correct. Uh, I can't really think of it. It basically seems Arid Mesa and Spire Bluff should go for Misty Rainforest and maybe Island, but that's I'm not sure. I didn't really run the numbers completely. Uh, One tool I like to advise people to use is mtgoncurve.com. It's not perfect. It makes a bunch of assumptions, but it's generally pretty good
Mhm.
about determining if your mana actually works.
Yeah, I find with the deck is basically you always want to be having red sources because a lot of
Hmm.
the late game power is Underworld Breach into like 4 bolts, and that's just like an red
Yeah,
spell
right.
essentially. So I'm like, the forest was a nod to Blood Mood being a real factor in
Hmm.
one of the top decks, and you can get forest and Beseiju, and you're fine. And I'm not sure if having a basic island really helps you that much. I guess.
Yeah, it's just I think in that case, if the plan is to get Forest versus Blood Moon, shouldn't the extra fetch be a green fetch as well?
Uh, that may be true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring up some of these points that crossed my mind when I looked at the deck first. This is even before the gameplay aspect because I think a lot of improvements can be made in the deck building process even before you play a game. Of course, you should obviously play some games to see if the deck even is, functional. Otherwise it's not worth spending time on really because everyone's really busy all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other question I had was uh I guess this relates more to the Gigantha, but I feel like in a lot of post-board games there's Rakdos Scam, or even like other decks that play Blood Moon that are disruptive. I think you would want to have access to that card like Fury and Gigantha simultaneously. I think this is specifically versus Rakdos where that would come up the most. So it's kind of weird to see that card. Obviously, Fury is a good card versus them, but I question if giving up Gigantha is the way to go versus them because I've just found it to be so good, basically.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Fury is just like so good in certain matchups in such a way that it gives you more removal spells, and I don't know if like putting the fourth Unholy Heat in the sideboard is really like particularly good for Fury. Is just like
Hmm.
so powerful in some of these matchups that allow you to actually make sure you don't die early and then you just outgrind them. But yeah, I mean, Black, as we've talked about a little bit, is the weird point of that.
Yeah, I'm fine with Fury if you don't need access to Gigantha, and I obviously there are matchups where that's the case. Like Hammer is the big one because like I can't imagine a game getting to the point where you actually put Gigantha into your hand,
Mhm.
cast Gigantha without them being unfathomably dead or you being really dead. It just basically seems impossible. So
Yeah.
uh I also would guess that the way the deck is set up, the hammer matchup is great, so that's probably not a big issue as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I did play against Hammer in one of the matches. Yeah.
Uh yeah, I guess the other point is you actually secretly have a lot of expensive cards in the deck because
Hmm.
Cursive Iteration's not a 2 mana spell in this deck.
I
And
think it's even rarely a 3 mana spell in this deck in particular too.
yeah, I'm kind of low on playing multiple Fables. I kind of wonder if the second Fable should be the fourth Tarmogoyf, just to lower your curve a slight amount and just give you that extra threat density. But I basically just do not want to draw an opening hand with a deck that contains two Fables and Mirror Breaker.
Yeah, Fable is kind of like the best card to draw on turn
Hmm.
4 or 5 that's not reliant on the graveyard, like breaches, just because a
Right.
lot of the times you end up with so many lands in your hand off the Wrenn that the loot plus a threat, uh, it's not really good at chapter 3, but like the looting and the threat has been really powerful, but it is potentially one of the most awkward cards. I used to have Ledger Shudders, and this deck just kind of
Hmm.
sucks at turning on Ledger Shudder, so it's just pretty mopey most of the time. But yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely believe that. I'm a little bit worried in the games where you kind of get stuck without a Wrenn. Then like Fable becomes a little bit awkward to use because it's a little bit slow in your hand and might clunk up. You just have a lot of 2 minute and 3 minute and like iteration if you're considering a 3 to 4 mana spell. Like you just have a lot of things that are kind of clunky for a modern deck, you know.
Hmm.
So just wanted to put that as a consideration for
Yeah.
something you could maybe fix. Uh, Mana Leak is kind of a card you don't see very often. It definitely makes sense to play Mana Leak over Counterspell. I will 100% agree with that. Like once you start playing Urza Saga and like Greenlands and Mountain, it's pretty hard to play Counterspell. Obviously Gigantha as well. Uh, I don't know if that's the approach you want to take, but it is a nice card to lock up a game versus like creativity or something when you have them on the back foot, you know?
Yeah, I was running Spell Pierce over Mana Leak
Mm-hmm.
before, but I think Mana Leak is like marginally better um in this deck basically. Like, but I'm not convinced. Mason was the big proponent of Mana Leak over Spell Pierce.
Well, what is the reasoning for playing Mana Leak over a 1 mana option, say Spell Snare or Spell Pierce?
It's countering 2 versus 3 has come up, or 3 versus 2 has come up a lot, and just being able to tag creatures has it just this deck usually ends up with a lot of mana. So like
Mm-hmm.
2 mana is typically not a big deal because you have so many turn one plays. But
Yeah. I'm also
it's not. I'm not
yeah.
super sold on Mana
Yeah.
Leak. Is my problem as well.
Yeah, my suspicion is it runs into the same issue that I'm worried about is like what happens if you just draw a hand that has, you know, expensive cards in it, like just a bunch of two like suppose you just for the sake of argument, you draw like Bauble, two lands, Mana Leak, Fable, you know, Tarmogoyf. I mean, I guess you're probably keeping, but I would say that hand's like not even really that appealing to me given how modern
Mhm.
works nowadays, you know? Yeah, so that's what I wanted to point out. I'm not a huge fan of basically it I would say Mana Week is good in the games where everything's going smoothly, and it's kind of atrocious in the games where it's not going smoothly, is how to best put it, you know?
Mhm.
Whereas I think a lot of the really good modern decks, the reason they're so good is most of their stuff is cheap. They have a little bit of top end, but not so many 2 mana spells. Like they played the full 8 pack of bolts and unholy heats, which maybe is something you'd still want to consider. I mean, I understand why you wouldn't do that because it's easy to clog up on those in a matchup where they're bad. But at the same time, I feel like most of the matchups in modern, the red cards are just really, really, really good. You know.
Yeah.
So I think that is something I would consider just playing the fourth heat, in some capacity. I would probably main deck it for the reasons we did. Like it just makes sense to play all of your generic interaction main really, and sideboard more narrow things.
Mhm.
Um, so that was a thought I had about that. There was one other note I wrote down. Oh
Urza
yeah,
Saga target.
yeah. No, I think it's fine to not play so many in your main when you only play
Mhm.
two. Um, I guess the one thing I would like recommend is in the further games you play with this deck is just note how often you are missing a threat or how often you don't have delirium. Just small notes I think are important to keep, and a lot of people don't do this. Just for deck building, basically,
Mhm.
because a lot of people just they're like, oh, I didn't have delirium this time or whatever, but the question is how often does it actually happen? Or was there something you could have done to avoid it? I think just taking notes on that sort of stuff actually matters a lot in a game of Magic as well. And it's hard to do when you're playing paper, of course, because you're not going to have the capability to like open up Notepad and write everything down unless you're very diligent about your life total pad or whatever. But I think on MTGO that is one of the things that you can do, and people probably don't do very often, if I had to
Mhm.
guess. So I'm just trying to give some like I don't think I brought this up before, but I know Reed is a big fan of having like Google Docs open and writing a bunch of notes while he's playing matches of MTGO, even while streaming. Um, it's just it's a really good thing to do, I think, and it's a good habit to build.
Mhm.
So just a generic recommendation. Um, yeah, no, I mean, without running some complicated computer simulations, it does seem like you should have delirium more often than not by like turn 3 or even
Oh
turn
yeah.
2. But it is. I'm just saying, just look at the times where something has gone awry. Um, is the best way of putting it. Uh,
Mhm.
question for you with regards to the deck: are there any matchups you found you've been struggling in, or what sort of things have been issues in the deck, generally speaking, that I didn't address?
Um, I will say that the way I lose a lot of the time is like I get to turn like 4 or 5, and I just end up drawing a bunch of lands and never drawing out of it, and my opponent like gets ahead on board. I
Mm-hmm.
find that to be way bigger of an issue than anything in particular. Um,
I
it
see.
feels like
Mhm.
Murktide in that way a lot. Like no matchup is like 100%, but no matchup is really that bad either, to be honest.
I think the flood thing is mostly unavoidable, and it happens when Wrenn and Six is going, but you don't really have a way to convert it besides the two fables. Um,
Right.
that's just naturally going to occur, and I don't think is really addressable. This used to be an issue for the 4 color Yorion decks as well. They would just have
Hmm.
Wrenn, but no way to convert like a bunch of extra lands, except their deck was just so good at like. Eventually, you would just like cast Emrakul with your like 10 lands or whatever. So
Yeah.
that was the flip side. Whereas
Right.
you don't have like you don't have expensive stuff to spend your mana on except for Urza Saga and Fable and I guess Expressive Iteration.
And
But
Breach.
yeah, and Breach. So I guess that's enough. Um, I think you just have to accept that as a cost of doing business with how the deck is
Hmm.
built. Um,
Hmm.
it's basically just always going to be an issue with Wrenn and Six decks. You're just going to have those games, and it's because you don't have like a big card drawer except Fable or Iteration or Breach, I guess, and you just don't happen to draw them. Uh, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But was there was there like something you found in the games you've played so far that particularly troubled you, or not particularly?
Let me Nothing's coming in my head, so I'm just actually gonna look through Goldfish real quick.
Okay.
Murktide, like you kind of are a bigger Murktide deck,
Mm-hmm.
so that's not typically a big deal. Hammer time, if they go underneath you, obviously can be a bad
Mm-hmm.
time, but there's a lot of sideboard.
Mm-hmm.
The two ancient grudges are such a house against them,
Yep.
and Ren
Mm-hmm.
Beseju has not been too bad. Creativity can be hard because they kind of hit their stride at a point before you're closing the game.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have a bunch of removal, it's really hard to get anything going. So creativity may be the hardest matchup that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That actually reminded me of a point that I had about your sideboard versus both creativity and Rhinos to a lesser degree. I've noticed this playing a lot with Flusterstorm versus those decks. I think versus smarter players, Flusterstorm is kind of worthless, actually. And what I should mean by that is if you're not killing them very quickly, it's easy for them to wait it out. So I've kind of found that it's honestly not very good, like, versus them.
mhm.
And Flusterstorm is like weirdly better versus I don't know, like not those decks. Like because both of those decks, well, specifically with creativity, if they have run going, Flusterstorm's also atrocious because it's just never going to tag it. And with the Rhinos thing, like I think the better Rhinos players will just wait if it's very clear that you're leaving up a blue every turn, and they'll just like do other things. They'll just like cast, a brazen bar or something like that. And kind of think maybe a better route is to not play that card and play
Mhm.
something like invasive surgery or, something weird like
Hmm.
negate or, I think there's a lot of options if you look hard enough. I've been a fan of playing one invasive surgery in a lot of decks in this format. Um,
Honestly, now that you said it, I feel like that makes a lot of sense because this deck has delirium like basically all the time.
yeah, it first popped up in Murktide, I think, and when I saw it, I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. I played in Legacy a long time ago to tag Loams, but obviously that's not a big deal nowadays. Uh, I think the surgery is worth considering over at least one Fluster. And I might just change the other Fluster to a Spell Pierce to tag Planeswalkers, honestly, instead of playing Flusterstorm.
Yeah,
Basically, I hate Flusterstorm more than most people, and I think really it's like just a relic of people not realizing how better players play against the card.
right. Yeah, because I really only have been bringing against Cascade and Creativity, so Invasive Surgery just seems strictly better.
Yeah, and like if you play Spell Pierce, you might find like a weird use for it where you haven't thought about it. You like suppose like some maniac shows up with like Enchantress, you'll be glad to have at least like one Spell Pierce instead of all Flusterstorms.
Hmm.
Just an example. I think it's just a good way of saying I like to have cards that aren't so specifically uh targeted towards certain decks. I mean, the surgery is definitely targeted, but I think that one's so powerful. But the spell pierce is kind of just a good card a lot of the time, and I think having one to keep people honest is kind of nice.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about the deck before we covered some of the matches with it.
Hmm.
And I'll probably have some more comments after. You know,
Yeah, the one up Urza Saga in the sideboard. I'm surprised you
I
didn't say anything.
well, it doesn't bother me because the way I view that is just sideboarding in another threat.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's,
also
it's
what like I mean to me it's clear what it's for. I guess to the average like player it looks very weird, but it's when you want to go up on threats or you want to increase access to the spell bomb, or might soul guide lantern or even shadow spear.
yeah. It used to be the fourth breach, but I find this deck
Mm.
is actually doesn't want four breaches ever. So
I think
that's
I'll
yeah. It's
yeah
rare for this Urza Saga.
I definitely agree with that. I think a lot of the not grinding station breach decks actually don't want the fourth breach because it's kind of like hmm. I think you can win a lot of games without drawing a breach as well is the best way of
Hmm.
putting it. Whereas like obviously the grinding station deck, you want to draw a breach, you want to draw a grinding station. That will probably get you to the missing part of your combo, which is like Mox Amber plus a legend.
Right.
So yeah, that covers the brief discussion of the deck. I guess we'll just go into the matches and see how I feel, or see how you feel, if there are things you want to discuss particularly.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge.
Oh, I'm definitely a fan of 2x speed, generally speaking, and
Yeah,
just
that was
pausing when necessary.
how do you change that? Playback speed
Yeah, yep. There you go.
2x.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is the I just played a league last night with
Mm-hmm.
the list that we talked about, so
Nice. Yeah, I mean, not much to say about this. If this hand's not a keep, I want a different deck because like you've
yeah,
already.
yeah. Um, I decided not to play the Tarmogoyf
So
because it
yeah,
died to a bolt.
well, yeah, it will even die to an unholy heat. So, no,
He,
it would not
yeah,
die to an unholy heat. Never mind. I think it dying to a bolt is too bad. Also, what if they just play like a Wrenn and Six or something? It's kind of disastrous, I think, given your hand.
yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Would you have just played it out and not dashed it?
Um.
I was afraid of prismatic ending off the Ragavan. That's
Yeah.
why I thought
The
that.
issue I have is them getting to use the mana and you committing 2 mana is kind of awful for you. It's a kind of a bad
Yeah.
mana exchange. I think I probably would have just cast and left up Mana Leak. And I think that makes
Okay.
a lot more sense on that turn cycle. If you had another land lined up, I probably would still do that. In fact, it's probably better. But so now, like, the problem is, I think you're exposed. If they just go like cast Teferi 3, your hand becomes non-functional, and then you'll probably have to go like iteration Tarmogoyf on your next turn. Um, Obviously, you did not know their creativity until right now when they fetched that proving ground.
Mhm.
Before that, like, it's possible that there's some like weird Jeskai deck that doesn't play Gigantha. But in either case, because of the Ragan Triumph, I'm kind of terrified of Teferi 3.
Yeah. Which is what
Yeah,
happens. Yeah.
yeah. This was basically the nightmare scenario with
Hmm.
the play you took. Yeah, obviously you have to cast this. Well, as things go, that's actually not bad.
With this being an Urza Saga, I feel like they have a bounce target, so I'd rather them just bounce the Goyfs than the Urza Saga, I guess.
I mean, you have to play the Goyf out. You basically just
Yeah.
have to burn like make them use all of their Teferi activations. Obviously, you're not being Archon ever, but I mean, if they have it, they have it. Like, you can't really do anything, you know? Well, I guess you could actually beat Archon with just Unholy Heat. I forgot about that. Like, that is
Yeah.
something that just happens a lot with these types of decks. If you play an Unholy Heat deck, one Archon's often not good enough, but I think, like, it might drain enough of your resources that it'll be problematic. Yeah, so yeah, now if they, like, do, like, a creativity for 2, at least you can mana leak it,
Hmm.
which is obviously definitely worth giving up. Alright, so this is the other issue I had with the Spirebuff Canal. I
Yeah.
didn't like
Hmm.
actually verbalize it. I think you're just gonna play a lot of games that last a while because of Wrenn and Six, where like or whatever, like you can just draw this land late and it's bad, and that's just gonna happen a lot. And because you have so many fetches and whatever, like I think it's just better not to play Canal in this deck personally.
Yeah. That's fair.
I think I'm okay with not playing the Goyf that turn, honestly, like someone pointed out. I mean, basically, you have to decide if you want to make a construct or play the Goyf. But yeah, I think now that you're here, I'm surprised you didn't mana leak it. Actually, I think it's just going to be so hard to mana leak anything productively now, right?
Yeah, so my thought process is I can kill the Wrenn with the construct tokens, or at least pressure it down. But
Think that will generally not end up very well for you because I think they'll just get too many lands back. Like they'll just get too
plus,
many dwarves or whatever, you know.
yeah, if I mana leak Wrenn, they could have done creativity for one. Was also a concern.
I see.
Oh, and here's a position where at this point, I think I'm trying to just. They're at 14. This will take them to
Mm-hmm.
11. I'm
Yeah.
looking at setting up a breach into a lightning bolt kill because I have a bolt and a
Okay.
bunch of cards in my
I see.
graveyard. So that was my thought process.
Yeah, it's pretty awkward that the Ren is at 4 loyalty. I think if it's at 3, the question's probably different. I
Hmm.
think if it's at 3, you're probably just priced into killing and just playing a slightly longer game. But I I think this is more of a judgment call rather than what's correct or not. Um, if you think the breach bolt plan is going to work, then this does seem fine. I just don't know how often it works versus them like arconing you for some amount to gain some life back and like make the plan not work, you know?
Yeah.
Also, like, I think the creativity deck still plays one post agent in the main, so that's something to consider if they're not tapped out.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the only benefit of playing Mana Leak too is that people will play around Spell Pierce, but
Mm-hmm.
typically people will not play around Mana Leak.
Yeah, I wouldn't really expect them to play around Mana Leak because it's such a fringe card. Ooh, that's kind of brutal. This is smart. Now they don't really have to fear anything, and probably the end is nigh.
Yeah. I probably should have played the Scalding Tarn over the Spire Bluff Canal, because then I knew they'd
Yeah.
Fire Eyes.
Oh, I think the actual mistake you made was you should have bobbled them before playing your land, right?
I did, I believe.
Okay, fair enough.
I think I knew that that was an issue.
All right, they are at 10. Do you have enough
So
cards in the
I
graveyard?
almost, this is the problem too. So they're almost dead here,
Mm-hmm.
but they're one off. Because I have the mana to bolt them
Mm-hmm.
4 times,
But you don't
but
have enough cards in the
I'm
graveyard.
like short
Yeah,
one card in the graveyard. It's really awkward because now I'm gonna have to kind of like with
right. I see.
with the Teferi.
Well, with the fetch, that puts you to 12, but I think you need 13. You basically need four
Yes.
sets of three minus the
Yeah.
bolt itself.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess you kind of just have to play Fable, Goyf, go, like,
Yeah.
and just hope you get another turn. And if you don't, like, so be it. I do think it's unlikely that they actually have a creativity because I think that one turn they iced you and didn't play creativity. I think
Yeah.
most people just would. So it would have to have been top decked within the last turn or two. But they do have a lot of looks. I mean, this is a lot of looks at a
Yeah.
creativity.
Yeah.
Bolt,
Yeah.
Wrenn,
They just
I
have double
guess.
bolt. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Bolt, Wrenn.
That was a reason to block the
Mm-hmm.
the 2/2
Right.
at 2 speed. This is hard to follow up.
Um, so yeah, it's kind of weird. So I guess the primary question is, do you think Breach is your primary plan or is Tarmogoyf your primary plan versus them?
Um, I think Goyf is better than Breach, but they don't really affect the graveyard typically. So I
Well,
don't know. It just felt like a good way to
mhm.
lose the game was just to get breaches like stuck in hand.
Right, but to that point is I feel like there's merit to just having like 3 Tarmogoyf, 1 Breach, and only draw it late,
Hmm.
because it's also like Breach is not. I don't think this game is really about playing fair versus them very often, which is what that card does versus like basically how often are you going to need to fire blast them, I guess, with Breach is the question. My I think my instinct is I don't think you have to do that very often.
Hmm.
I think if you just like play Tarmogoyf and disrupt them a little bit, you can probably just kill them with the Tarmogoyfs before they get to assemble 2 breaches or whatever.
Hmm.
Especially with Veil of Summer in the mix. And maybe to that end, it's possible that I would just leave in all of the unholy heats and like shave like 1 lightning bolt.
Hmm.
So that's mostly what I was thinking about while you were sideboarding right there, you know?
Yeah.
Hmm. Actually, well, to unpack that for a sec, I'm actually surprised you shuffled away the Fable, because I think it's probably a better than average draw because you only have 2 Tarmogoyfs in your deck, right?
Yeah, I was looking for interaction of some form, but maybe Fable is just good enough.
I think this game Fable will probably be good enough, or like rather it might not be like strictly good enough by itself, but it sees so
Hmm.
many cards that I think you probably should keep it. And it's also like what are we going to do on turn 3 otherwise? Like we don't have something lined up. I think like keeping the Fable makes a lot of sense to me personally, because if you just there's just so many cards to draw here that aren't as impactful as Fable, I think is how I the best way of putting it. Um in fact, like I think the cards that improve you are Mana Leak, Tarmogoyf, and I guess Fluster Storm to a small degree, but if they just like draw Wrenn and Six versus your Fluster, then you're kind of sunk as well.
Hmm.
So I think I probably will just bite the bullet and keep the Fable there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so locked in on interaction.
We're gonna draw an Underworld Breach instead of a Tarmogoyf. I can feel it. I think basically this is just how it goes. Like they're trying to interact with your stuff, but not in a way that like actually messes with you. Like basically, I think Tarmogoyf minus prismatic ending is not actually that easy for them to kill. Is the best way of putting it. Definitely attacking first is correct. If you play DRC and they just cast fire and you miss, it's like kind of horrible
Yeah.
for you. Well, I guess you can't miss because you would have the bolt, but
Yeah, I felt like I didn't want to just throw away the bolt though.
yeah. Any consideration to tapping Spirewolf Canal? I guess you have another stomping ground to go get, but
Yeah. The only other reason was to make it look like I was holding a blue. They really fuck up here.
yeah, don't you Don't you get to deal them one, just blow it up again, get a land back?
Yeah.
This doesn't really make any sense, no.
Yeah, I think they just didn't realize.
Or are we gonna get them? Nope. Sadly, our Bosage is in play, but
I just wanted to use my mana
no,
effectively.
I definitely agree with doing that here. Also agree with paying, you know, just try to buy
Yeah.
some time to like. If you get to cast that second iteration and not be dead, you're probably in a good spot. Well, maybe not a good spot. You're in an okay spot. Also, another thing about Flusterstorm, notoriously awful versus Teferi as well. I
Yeah.
mean, so is Surgery, but Spell Pierce isn't at least. I think you're priced into keeping it probably. Like it's basically the same scenario as the Fable thing earlier, right?
Yeah. Now though, I felt like I just wanted to. I can solo up the Zone Holy Heat, and like a random card was not put in the expressive iteration, definitely.
Right. Them making a treasure makes me think that they have another Archon in hand, basically. I don't know if you registered that at the time. Also, I think
Do this before fetching, so it's generally
yeah.
spell period.
I mean, it would have to be exactly Spell Pierce, but you have no reason to believe that they cited out Spell Pierce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking basically I didn't want to lose their surveil, I think, and then kind of played funky.
I think it's too hard for them to get out of this now. Like, I think they'll be dead in all scenarios before they get to do something real by this
Yeah.
point.
I only have one card in hand.
Yeah, their deck doesn't really like draw two cards at once to like kill you. Like they don't have like a Night's Whisper or something.
Yeah, and even if they'd have to be able to Archon for 2 somehow. That's not possible. I don't think.
So you do have a bolt. So that
Yeah.
means just Snapcaster Bolt obviously is lethal.
Yeah.
I probably would just bobble them first for the information before showing that, but that's like a minor point.
Hmm.
Also wondering after seeing that stuff if you should have the second Boseiju inverse them.
Just for their enchantments?
Yeah, Leyline Binding is a big
Yeah.
one.
That's how I have the Haywire in.
Yeah, I think it might just be nice to have the Boseiju and obviously the Tarmogoyf.
Really awkward into Wrenn, but I
I think here you can't. Yeah, you can't avoid it. I also think, I guess if they're always fetching, you won't know. But I was thinking maybe there was merit to bobbling them first. But if they're always going to fetch, it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you dodged a bullet, and it's so unlikely that they have removal because most people would just, sorcery speed it to play around like a spell pierce or a fluster or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was safe because if they had fire, they would have
Yeah,
just fired
no,
it off.
it's impossible for them to have fire ice.
I could have upkeep this.
Yeah, I don't think using the treasure end step makes sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes you draw those archons without persist. How are they already at 9? This is so weird. I guess creativity always has had a painful mana base. Actually, is the answer. So I guess the question is, do we even need the breach? As there's probably not. I think you should definitely discard the Tarn, and the question is if you discard the breach.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I did here.
Ooh, that's like the one card I wouldn't discard actually. You can just shoot the blocker.
I think I take a weirder line here.
Yeah, I think this is probably worse. This is part of why. But the other reason
Um,
is
so
I think just not letting them block your Ragavan through a spell pierce is. Oh, I see. Never mind.
I
Okay,
think this gives me a
yeah.
chance to hit bolt off the top for lethal.
Hmm. Okay. This.
That I think, yeah,
I
this line
see.
is the way I calculated it is I have like 3 looks at a bolt at the top for lethal because I didn't think I could stop them basically from like
I see. Putting an
Arcani
Archon.
next turn, and so
Got
now
it.
I went into the mindset of, oh, I should probably just try and finish this game right now. That was my worry, and I kind of went all in on this line.
Actually, when you frame it like that, I think that does make more sense. We don't have any reactive stuff, obviously. So the bauble will surveil, and then I guess you can just like bauble them to see. But you can just like cast bauble. Let's see. So effectively, bauble costs 2 cards in the graveyard, and you have
Yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, this is probably good then. And even still, you could probably just like find a spell pierce, and that's probably or a flusterstorm, and that's probably good enough.
yeah, that was my mindset when I took this line. Is
Right.
maybe the Wrenn wasn't necessary, but like this is what I
Mm-hmm.
thought was planned out.
Got it.
And this is the awkward spot. Basically, we can't hit a bolt anymore. Maybe I should have just binned expressive
No,
iteration,
I
but
think you're supposed to bin it there. Yeah.
my thought process is now if they Archon, if if they get one Archon in play, expressive iteration helps me get to a way that I can beat it.
Mm-hmm.
And if they make two, I'm really going to be digging.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but I could also have bobbled once more, to
Yeah,
see one more card. But
that's why I wanted to mill it, just because of the extra
yeah,
card. I think now this is. I think your plan was good, but now it's going to be hard to get out of it unless you hit exactly two unholy heats. Oh, I think you used one. Was it?
I was almost to the lightning bolt.
So it was literally under the EI. Oh no, you drew for turn. I
No,
see.
I
Yeah,
drew
yeah.
one.
Okay.
No, I had one more.
But you would have drawn. I don't know. It.
No, I would have drawn it for turn.
Yeah.
Here, it would have been the steam vents.
Right.
I think I just got it on a late, and I think I only have like one left.
Yeah. This is why I like leaving all of them in. It's also because it's the cleanest answer to Teferi once it's resolved as well.
Yeah. Terrell Robbins.
Yeah. I think there was. I think you were supposed to mill that EI essentially. That was towards the end
Mm-hmm.
there.
Oh no, I would have drawn it because I would have milled one more, but I would have drawn one more. I would
Oh,
have got it in their upkeep.
okay. It would have been lethal unless if they had like spell pierce into like creativity for one. But
I didn't. Okay, yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Yeah. So takeaways are just like kind of just imagine what the game's going to look like. But with regards to shuffling that first Fable away, I think like think about it a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
about what's going to happen, and like you do need to get something going versus them, because I don't think you want to play like Infinity Turns versus Archon Cruelty or whatever.
Right.
And
Hmm.
I think the other thing to note is Tarmogoyf looked like it would have been fantastic basically all those games. Like,
Yeah, I haven't sat down and thought about the sideboarding more holistically yet,
mm-hmm.
and that's definitely been a problem.
I,
I'm pretty find it
um,
pretty hard to figure out how to sideboard in the moment,
sure,
which is why typically before any tournament I sit down and make the whole guide.
right. Basically, I think for most of those games, what you don't actually want is Treasure Cruise. What you want is just like a big like creature on turn two, if you can
Yeah.
manage it.
Hmm.
Because like Treasure Cruise is also not good in your opening hand. Obviously, like that's just not really how the card works. Well, I guess with fetch lands, whatever, it's like kind of different. But the idea is that you would rather have a threat on turn two rather than a card draw spell.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Let's just see what uh this round two is like. Just catch your Triumph.
It's good with 4 reds, I swear.
Yeah, I think the card would be better if you could also guarantee never to draw it as well. But yeah, but no, I would keep as well. You just go like DRC Shadowsphere in turn two probably.
Yeah. And the Fable allows me to keep the 2 breaches and not feel like it's that terrible.
Oh, the old any piece of cardboard's good with brainstorm, huh?
That's why I played Brainstorm.
Island drum's interesting. That actually lets you write off a lot of decks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My thought process is probably Breach. They probably play Bolt. I should probably not play the Tarmogoyf when it's boltable.
I also think it's probably Breach. I also think just playing the DRC Shadowsphere is better there.
Yeah.
Their Ledger Shredder is a lot better than what we have going on currently, but I guess the Tarmogoyf is going to get pretty big. Oh, and the grinding station tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Hmm. Looks like this is going to be a hard one to win now. Well, I guess maybe not, but hmm. So there's also the other problem that your underworld breaches aren't actually lethal in the matchup.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, often they're lethal, but from this board state, they're basically never going to be lethal. Whereas, like, if they literally had like station plus breach next turn, they have a lot of looks at like insta killing you. So yeah, I think I also agree with discarding both of the breaches as well and trying to go for a different game plan.
So the consideration here was to equip Shadow Spear or not. Shadow
Because of
Spear on
Unholy
an
Heat.
Unholy Heat, yeah.
Yeah, I think I would. I don't think your life total actually matters whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like worrying about life total is not a luxury you have. I believe. Do you mind checking if this is still at 2x speed? I think it might
Maybe
reset.
it's not, yeah.
Yeah, it.
I'm like, I wonder it felt really slow. It was not.
Yeah. I was wondering about that because I'm like, scalding turn has gone. All right, so this is. I think a breach is. So they can.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, Breach should be lethal next turn.
it's not deterministic. Actually, is it?
They can get a Mox Amber off the
Yeah. Okay.
Urza
Then
Saga.
yeah. Then it is deterministic. So I guess
So,
I
yeah.
think probably. I guess let's see what you do, but I have a plan of what I would do here.
Yeah, my plan, I'm going to try and cut them off mana while really trying to pressure their life total, I think is what I did.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little awkward though on do I want to give them a Shredder trigger or not? Is it also what I'm trying to figure out.
I think if you only cast one spell this turn, you can never win. Like I think it's just
Yeah.
too hard. I mean, obviously it sucks to give them a shredder trigger. Like you would prefer not to do that, but so I think Personally, there was some merit to just bolting the Teferi first, but yeah, if you're going to do this, you should have bolted the Teferi first because I believe it pumps your Goyf by 1.
Yeah. I thought about that after.
Okay.
I remember this now.
Yeah.
And my thought process is I just want to go after their mana, and this turns off Mox Emperor.
Does it? If they have breach, they just breach back the Ragavan, then tap the Amber for mana, right?
Well, yeah, sure, yeah, but if they don't have breach and they're gonna have to try
Okay,
an
sure.
EI, it really cuts their mana. Is my
Sure.
thought.
Yeah, I feel like the semi-mirror in game 1 is not actually a matchup where you're favored. Because I kind of think Tarmogoyf doesn't matter very much. I mean, obviously, if it kills them, then it does matter. But I think it's actually not that easy to kill them with Tarmogoyf before they kill you with the combo.
Yeah, this game is a little weird, but
Oh, do they not have it? Kind of looks like they don't have it.
no, they don't have it. This game gets really bad. The Tarmogoyf looks okay. I should probably definitely put the Wrenn into my hand over this Wooded Foothills for this reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would be dead, right? You just clear the blocker, and then you attack with 2 glyphs.
Yeah.
And now we have to go grab Gigantha, which also seems like it really shouldn't matter on average, but
Not of this matchup, but this matchup
no.
gets terrible. I'm gonna speed it up.
I agree. I think there's just like a lot of
This is pretty garbage time.
see, they're trying to shred into a breach because it's still obviously very lethal. Oh, they use 2 red cards to kill your. I see.
Yeah.
The breach is lethal. Bolt is lethal. That's not. So probably. Yeah. I don't know. I mean just play your idiots out probably.
Yeah, I decided to definitely only play Giganta though, because I don't want to give them the loot.
Well, they have 0 cards in hand, right? So it's just like a random mill. I guess like
Sure, but if this Ledger
it
Shredder becomes a
sure.
4/6, it could outsize the Giganta, and I can always just dash
Sure.
the Ragavan. This is my
That's
thought
reasonable.
process.
I guess you have so much mana that like giving up 2 mana this turn doesn't really matter as well.
Yeah.
So do they have their own Shadow Spear in the main deck is the real question.
No.
They have Aether Spellbomb. Okay. The time for Gigantha equip go? I guess it is.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane that they haven't drawn a breach in 32 cards.
Oh yeah. This.
So they have a 3/5 and two 5/5s. Attacking doesn't seem like it does very much.
No. But next turn, if the board stays as it is, Ragavan dashing will be good enough.
Yeah, and I would always just make them have it by this point. Like,
yeah,
cutting off any draw step that you can is worth so much. Okay. So they're just hanging on by the skin of their teeth.
I didn't want to give them a loot.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, so it gets awkward if they draw another Unholy Heat, because then you can't ping them twice in one turn cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the only consideration, but it's probably better for to cut, like, to make sure they don't draw the breach to kill you.
Yeah. Real garbage time.
What I'm gonna say is, I think Thassa's Oracle is worse than Grape Shot right there. Because they could just Grape Shot your Reflection.
Yeah.
Oh, that's convenient.
Want to make them use their removal spell. Yeah.
And then just cast 2, deal 1 damage to you for 2 mana. Oh, they did find the heat.
And I just double run them and they don't find anything.
That was a real grinder. Alright.
Yeah, pretty dumb there at the end, but...
Yeah, I mean... Yeah, I agree. Shadow Spear doesn't matter. Ancient Grudge, obviously excellent. Graveyard Hate matters. Boseiju matters. I think Ragavan's not the card I would cut. I would just cut Tarmogoyfs, probably. Like, some number of Tarmogoyf. Basically, I think the 1 mana cards are really good.
Yeah, makes me feel like maybe the sideboard's misconfigured just 'cause I'm having so much problems knowing where to cut and what to bring in.
Well, yeah, that's generally a problem with new decks. Like, their sideboards tend to be worse because it takes a lot of time to, like, actually fix all of the problems that the sideboards have, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of surprised that, first off, well, I guess I shouldn't be that surprised, but I'm surprised that they cited an EE.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised they set it on 1. Oh, I guess that's why, with the Emery in hand, that's why they did it. That makes more sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of decisions. I could play Tarmogoyf, Wrenn.
I mean, you could also attack and see if they block.
With DRC, yeah.
Yeah, I think I probably would just attack first and see what they do. Obviously, like, it reveals your hand face up, but that's fine. Like,
I definitely thought about it. I think I do it next turn.
The damage is kind of done by that point because they get to like play something from their graveyard, you know?
They only hit a grinding station.
Yeah, that's true.
Was
But
my thought process.
they can always find a bauble though.
Yeah.
By the way, since you didn't attack, I definitely agree with playing Tarmogoyf if you're not going to do that because it's just like the best clock versus them. So I actually think it's worse to do this thing this turn. And the reason is if they spell pierce your Wrenn, it's kind of a disaster, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, they're more incentivized to block this turn because you have Urza Saga. Like, just tying up your mana makes sense from their perspective, I think. She can't keep getting away with it.
Yeah.
You got away with a little bit there, I think. They ignored your run. Interesting. So they prioritize mana. Oh, they hit a DRC. Huh. And they didn't even want to play it.
Yeah, I got Soul Guide Lantern because I felt like the only way I lose from here was a breach went out of nowhere, and if I could just control their graveyard,
I agree
I'm
with
not as
that.
worried.
I agree with that. I like just with the Tarmogoyfs, you don't need to like you don't actually need to do anything special.
Yeah, and here's the.
All these games are just convincing me more and more you should have 4 Tarmogoyfs in your deck.
I just feel like Tarmogoyf is like a card that mentally in my head occupies a space of like it was like a really cool and like almost mythological card. So much so that I'm worried sometimes that I overrate it. Like when I
Fascinating.
started playing, it was just like, oh yeah, Tarmogoyf was the best creature, and like that's what I got into Magic hearing. And so sometimes I'm just like, I think Tarmogoyf is really good in this deck, but it's not just because I think Tarmogoyf's really cool. And sometimes I struggle to know if I'm properly evaluating it, but it looks really good most of the time.
I mean, I just want to reiterate the thing is when I played like the Zoomer Jund Saga deck, Tarmogoyf was so insane in that deck because it was always just like a 7/8, which is
Yeah.
it just kills really fast, and that's kind of what you need, especially in that matchup or even like your first matchup. It I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say that I think it's probably wrong for you not to play for Tarmogoyf.
Okay. Yeah. The numbers on everything is kind of partially just like I'm still tinkering and like
Right.
yeah.
Ooh, this is a hand that I would figure out my likelihood of drawing another colored source before doing anything.
Ugh.
You are on the draw, so you get 2 bites of the apple.
Yeah.
Now you have the classic dilemma.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
feel
really.
like it's
Yeah, I don't think it's actually a dilemma here. I think you're supposed to just hope for one turn, and if you lose, you lose. Ooh, they didn't have a land? Really good for you.
since I wanted to keep on top, I thought it was worthwhile just to hold on to the
No,
bauble.
no, you shouldn't. What if they just play another Esper Sentinel?
That is.
I guess I guess you would just like Wrenn, like pay then play Bobble, but I think there are some scenarios where you would rather just play it that previous turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say there is an embarrassing punt in this match somewhere. I think it's the only one that I'm really embarrassed by.
I mean, punting happens to everyone. I wouldn't worry about it too much.
No,
Like,
this is what I remembered.
dude, if someone claims that they don't punt, I would just not believe them. Like, also, I definitely agree with playing Fable. Just like you have to get things going because you don't want to sit around forever.
So they reveal a Shadow Spear here.
Hmm. That makes me think
Which,
Culture Complete's already in their hand, and
or
they also think that they can't like. I mean, I guess the other thing to think about is they probably have a hammer in hand because
mm-hmm.
otherwise it doesn't really make sense to get the Shadow Spear over hammer. I think there's a possibility that they have Culture Complete. That's not 100%. Uh, so based on that, like you probably have to kill the Stoneforge, and based on that, you just want another removal spell. So you should just dump 2 cards. It
Yeah.
doesn't you just can't dump Unholy Heat. I would probably discard Wrenn and Six and Expressive Iteration, honestly.
Okay. Hmm. Okay. Yeah. I think I should have. Makes.
I kind of feel like you're not going to have enough time to cast that iteration, but it's close. The like you should keep one. Oh, I think
Yeah.
you almost for sure should discard 2 cards there.
Yeah. I think I thought that they were going to try and equip or something, and they just don't have to.
Right.
Like, and now I'm kind of like dead to
That
a lot of stuff.
that's why I wanted to try to like dig for another red card.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And the problem is like I'm just Omega dead to 2 hammers.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think you can beat that, but that's fine.
Well, but I could if I had dug
Yeah,
in
yeah,
maybe a little
sure.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, that
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 was a problem.
sure. I think basically you always have to discard 2 cards there. Like
Yeah. They just have double hammer here.
okay. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's how it is. That's why I think Hammer is actually not as bad as people think versus these types of decks because this stuff can happen. Like
Yeah.
there's kind of a cap to how bad it is for them. Is how I would put it better.
Oh yeah. I finished buying all the cards for hammer and paper, so
Okay, sure. I also suspect this is a matchup where you do not need to combo them ever with Breach. So I'd probably have 0 in my deck. Like, I think I'd rather have DRC or Fable than that Breach.
hmm I view the one of Breach probably more highly than I should.
Well, the
I'll say
problem
that.
is, like, uh, I guess the best way of putting this is I view Breach as like a 4 to 5 mana play,
Yeah.
and I kind of feel like the games where you're doing that versus Hammer, you're probably well set up as it is, especially in this
Mm.
configuration. So like it also opens you up to something like Relic if they decide it in. If you just draw like Breach versus Relic, it's kind of miserable as well. To be fair, Tarmogoyf is really bad versus Relic too, so that's like not the end all be all, but Fable and DRC at least like are more functional slash do something
Yeah.
when the relic is involved, or like or you need to just find removal spells. You know, like the Fable is pretty good in that spot.
Yeah. think that makes sense.
Basically, I think you want Breach if you want to grind, but when you don't need to grind, you should consider not having it in your deck.
Yeah, I guess the way you said it is it's really a 4 or 5 mana card
Mm-hmm.
or card, and so I should be thinking about it like that. Because like that's one of the big reasons I cut the Fable. It's 3 mana and breaches way more than that.
Yeah. I do think Tarmogoyf shines in this matchup too, though. It just kills super fast.
I think Saga's not very good here.
I agree. I
And
also just
yeah,
don't think you have time to play Saga
yeah,
early versus them.
yeah.
And also, all of the other cards in your hand you kind of need to keep. So, like, there's literally not another card to bottom. Any merit to just playing Esper Sentinel first?
Yeah, I should have.
Okay.
I didn't think about it. I
Yeah.
I remember thinking I was being dumb.
Yeah. Because then, like, that Pierce is a lot more painful for them, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw blue in game one, but like
Yeah, no,
something
but
I should definitely have thought about.
yeah. This is why siding out Ragavan versus this matchup is cap.
Yeah, and I think it's a bad prior. Like it used to be much worse, but now I think they've changed
Sure.
their deck where it's fine
Yep.
again. I figured the only way I lose here is like Sigarda's Aid, Hammer on Inkmoth, so I feel like he is insulating against that. Yeah, not much to say about that one, I think, except for that spell playing into the spell pierce without a card draw.
And sometimes Tarmogoyf is that good. Well, I guess Ragavan was that good that game.
Well, yeah.
This is a
Sure, be
lot
two
of
cards.
yeah. This is a lot of Mishra's baubles.
Do you keep these hands?
Um, complicated answer. Well, okay. Short answer is this hand on the draw. I would almost certainly keep. Longer answer is this hand on the play. I probably also keep in this matchup just because I value both that highly. But
Yeah,
certainly, you have three like mystery box cards. You don't know what's going to happen.
yeah, yeah. The other thing I was thinking was I don't have to bolt on my turn, so at least one of them will scry and not just
Mm-hmm.
redraw.
Right.
Yeah. That's my problem with playing Bobble decks or Once Upon a Time decks is sometimes it feels
So your top
I
card
know
is
there's a
Steam Vents. Yeah. It's kind of interesting what you're supposed to do. I think I'm inclined to draw that card and just bolt their Ornithopter upkeep to deny them white.
yeah, I definitely think about denying them white. I think I fetch and then think about it. After like I think I'm like,
Oh,
oh, I could
yeah.
probably just done an upkeep.
Yeah. I think you're supposed to. Because also, like, just drawing that Steam Vents, I think, is pretty good for you.
Yeah.
And the other downside is if they have Blacksmith skill or something like this, like, it gets a lot worse for you, right?
Yeah.
By the way, I don't know, like, if they noticed. You signing out Gigantha should be like a loud tell
Oh,
that something is going on,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I my last RCQ, someone was playing Gigantha and didn't quote unquote reveal it in game two, and I was like, do I ask them if they're not revealing it in game two because it wasn't super clear to me what they were trying to do. It was a weird experience,
Yeah,
and
kind
I don't
of.
like it.
I don't really like how the rules are set up for it, but it's kind of hard to, like, for it to be better, I guess. Atmosphere.
Yeah, I'm just
Oh, so they
in a
have
really bad
pure
spot here
still?
to kind of have the good state. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that is obviously not great for you. You need an ancient grudge.
I do have Haywire Might.
I think probably I would ditch the Wrenn, but that's definitely the hard decision here, right?
Yeah. I think the way I was thinking about it is I kind of have to get lucky off the top, and Ren allows me to win this game after getting lucky. But maybe that's a little too greedy. I am definitely a over greed player.
Well, I think like they only have one card in hand, so I don't even think you have to get that lucky, right?
Yeah,
So that's why I'm inclined to just keep both red cards.
yeah.
I guess they're all red. I meant like both one drop red cards, obviously.
Hmm. This is really awkward.
I mean, is it? Isn't it a 16 power creature? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just
Uh,
like it's putting me in the best, but I do get Haywire Might.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And is it worthwhile to kill that Esper Sentinel this turn?
I
At
think
the end of
so.
that turn? Hmm? There was something
Oh,
I.
at the end of turn? No, I don't think so. Because I think like it just gives them a card, right? Like, and you're taking 2 extra damage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. What do you think the play is from here? I'm definitely
So,
getting Haywire Might. Like that.
so
That part is pretty clear.
I think basically you need to figure out what you want to kill this turn. And my instinct is okay, so suppose you kill the hammer, then the construct will be 4/4, right? So then you could. Interesting. I wish your mana wasn't so awkward, but. Well, I guess it was an Urza Saga the whole time. So I think basically you have to might one of the equipments, obviously, because it says
Hmm.
non creature on it. Um, well, if you don't kill the hammer, you just kind of lose, right?
Yeah.
So that has to happen. The question is if you put 3 damage on construct and 1 on the S percentile, I think. Oh, that doesn't work, right? One,
There.
2, and.
Yeah. Yeah. It does not work. It doesn't
Okay.
work.
So
Someone.
basically,
Someone fucked up doing that.
yeah, I guess basically what I would do is probably just pitch cast Fury, killing the construct, and then use Unholy Heat to kill the other thing, right?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
It kind of sucks because like then you're literally on empty, but the problem is like I think if you do anything else, it's just too hard to win.
So
Oh,
yeah, I agree. I make a mistake here though. Well, actually, so you would pitch cast what? Did you say?
pitch cast Fury.
Yeah, pitching what?
Uh, I think you have to pitch the Wrenn and use the Unholy Heat on the other creature as well.
Yeah, yeah. But I miscalculated here.
Okay. Yeah, I
I
mean,
wanted to get the run down, and I did the math one off. That's
oh, I think this causes you to die,
it
actually.
does. Yes, it does. I was gonna leave them with just the Esper Sentinel, and then I realized it too late.
So what you could do here, even though obviously you're in a bad spot, is just Fury the Esper Sentinel.
I'm just
And
dead.
Oh no, then they activate Nexus. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's awkward, obviously, but sometimes it happens. You just miscalculate and think something works when it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was like at an awkward point in the time because
I
I fetched with
so
Wrenn for.
I mean, obviously this doesn't justify the mistake, but I think you're very likely to lose from that spot anyways. If I had
Yeah.
to guess, but with only two lands, no cards in hand, they have Nexus land. Basically, like I think even just like a Stoneforge insta kills you. So it's you're probably dead regardless, but obviously you didn't do yourself any favors right there.
Yeah. The other thing that maybe could have been done was getting Aether Spell Bomb and bouncing the construct.
Yeah, the issue I have with that is,
It leaves you
uh,
with a hammer.
first off, it leaves them with the hammer, so any pure still off the top, like, just becomes a problem still. And the other problem
Hmm.
is, I think if you don't, if you just don't, if you just get rid of the construct, they should you core outfitter as well. That means they have more equippers than normal in a deck.
Hmm.
So I think it's just like, I think basically that plays off the table for me personally.
Okay.
Versus Yogg, huh? Some spoilers.
Uh,
Although it becomes very clear very quickly. Like,
yeah. I mean, I don't think there's anything too crazy in this game.
I feel like this matchup should be super straightforward. Like, I think it's just kind of easy to play.
Yeah. It does feel like you gotta remove everything that colors so much of your decisions.
Well, I kind of feel like what should happen is that if they don't like insta kill you, what's going to happen is Breach plus Bolt will kill them basically every game because they don't actually like gain very much life. So I do think Tarmogoyf is not at its best, but on the other hand, like I think it can be difficult to win a game without like versus endurance if your plan is only just Breach, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really looking for like a Tarmogoyf or something here. Maybe I should just cast the Fable.
I
It just
think
feels like it's really low impact with the Grist.
well, but casting Tarmogoyf is also low impact with the Grist, right?
Yeah. Or I guess I got found an unholy heat once the expressive iteration went to the bin.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
I think that should actually tell you something about their hand. I think
Just
it's pretty likely that they have another Eldritch evolution if they're doing that. I feel like
yeah. Or they just have Yawgmoth rolled up.
I don't think that they can have Yawgmoth rolled up because it doesn't really make sense to evolution for guys instead of playing Yawgmoth when you already have a young wolf out, right?
Yeah. I'm
I think this is fine to do. Like,
well, yeah. I'm like dead if I take anything more than one here. I think because the
right,
Yogg can all. Yeah.
right.
I think that's how the math works out.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yep.
Because when it alts, Grist goes to the graveyard and counts itself,
Right.
right?
Alright, so kind of hoping this breach does a lot of work, I guess. So we don't really have a lot else going on, which is unfortunate. Oh, it's a Court of Calling. Basically the same thing as Electric Evolution. Wait, so they're at... No, you don't have enough cards in graveyard, obviously.
Yeah,
You would
but I can at
need...
least heat some of
Yeah.
this stuff.
Yeah, I think you would need 12 cards in graveyard with the Saga on the stack.
I can put Bobble Foothills in.
Yeah, and be a little bit short.
Yeah, but at least I can heat. The idea is I can
Mm-hmm.
heat some of this stuff, and then I'm pretty sure they fuck up here, which is very nice of them. I think that's what I'm thinking of. I think they start digging for an endurance, but don't do the math.
Oh, did they put themselves to 9? Yeah, they're dead now instead. That's a nice freebie. I mean, everyone punts.
I think I could have at least been able to heat the Grust and the Yawgmoth,
Yeah,
and I would have been
mm-hmm.
maybe I had a chance, but
Yeah, you definitely stole
okay,
one
I got
there.
gifted.
So Gigantha's kind of an interesting one in this matchup. I think it's generally not good, but I definitely could see like weird games where it would be good. If that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
it, I mean, sometimes you just get into a flooded board state where you just need anything to not get killed by their stupid idiots.
hmm.
I mean, honestly, I think I'm kind of not thrilled about Mana Leak versus them, just on the assumption that like people love to overboard Veil Summer.
Yeah,
This is actually a matchup where I would probably have zero rag in my deck on unironically because it's so awful versus Young Wolf. On the play, I think you could justify having all of them in, but on the draw, I would probably have like close to zero in my deck.
hmm.
Kind of interesting. You don't have the Soul Guide Lantern in. Like,
Is that card actually that good against them?
it's okay to cut off some things sometimes, but the real killer app for it is like you can use it in conjunction with removal to like cut off the Undying
And
Idiots.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it would obviously be better as some licensors specifically in this matchup because that works a lot better. It doesn't cost
yeah.
you a lot of stuff, but I think in general I would have it in for some. I mean, it's obviously not insane, but it's a fine thing to have.
Okay. It just feels like it's not like I get to draw a card off of it. It just
Right.
feels like I guess that's like the fail case. I guess I don't know. Hmm.
It makes the decision a lot easier, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
I think even if you didn't see that, you probably are just priced in because one going from 1 to 3 for them is so insane.
Yeah. Only benefit here would be I could play Tarmogoyf instead of the Wrenn or off the Urza Saga.
Hmm.
Um, but
I think it's good to play the Ren actually. Ooh, Dryad Arbor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they can cord for 3. I guess they don't have it. So one thing that I'm noticing that I would probably be wary of is I think that deck often or can sideboard Magus of the Moon. So you
Wait,
might want to
really?
be you might want to be more careful how you fetch.
That is good to know. I didn't know that was a thing.
I'm not sure that they would necessarily do it versus you, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that some maniac just sides it in and tries to like kill your Urza Saga that way, you know?
Yeah.
And also like you just fetch chalk a lot to take a lot of damage here too.
Yeah.
Like I think there's a case to be made that you should fetch one less time and like sort of pump the brakes and not be at 12 from your lands.
hmm
Also, what actually occurred to me is I think Aether Spellbomb is not actually good versus the
Yeah.
matchup. Wait, so you attack.
I can pull if they go for it again.
Sure.
My thought process was I wanted them to basically tap out of
Mm-hmm.
being able to keep the scavenging ooze alive through a lightning bolt,
Right.
and that attack kind of makes them do it.
Did you side out the Shadow Spear?
I don't remember. I think I did.
I think you shouldn't
I
actually,
think. I
right?
think. Yeah.
Because
Well, we'll
the
find out in a second, but
yeah, well, we will find out in a second. I think
I
basic.
guess it just feels like there's not enough room in the deck. Is where it's feeling a lot.
It's true. You are kind of like, well, that's why I kind of just want to play like a tap out, like good cards game and not have mana leak in my deck. So I also think like
Yeah.
leak is an awkward card versus them as well.
Yeah.
Oh, now you have an interesting decision. Also, a lot of these games have made me wonder if
But
you.
do you have the Shadow Spirit?
Okay, good. I mean, I think it just makes so much sense when they have like Young Wolf in their deck, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I thought I caught it for a second. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I think I caught it against
Yeah.
Hammer.
Oh, yeah, I think that's fine to do because I don't think that game's like a chip damage matchup. I think like
Yeah.
one way or another, someone's going to die by a lot, and Shadow Sphere doesn't really matter. I think their Shadow Spheres are actually better than yours, if I had to guess, because like it can get to the point where they have to get through Tarmogoyf with
hmm
their things, and Shadow Sphere is the best way to do that.
Yeah.
Like with the Colossus Hammer involved as well, to just like trample over for lethal.
Yeah.
So I will say that I think most of the hands you've drawn have been pretty good. You haven't actually mulliganed a lot. Is
No, I mean the deck is all just good cards.
yeah.
I am a proponent of no bad card decks.
Mm. This is also a matchup where having more access to the force would matter a lot, I think.
Yeah. Oh, this is not scam for what it's worth. If it comes up,
Oh, I see.
this is like more of actual redback, like earlier spike list mid range.
Got it. Well, if they're not trying to Blood Moon you, then like you don't actually need the force. But if they are trying to Blood Moon you, then Shizo Death Store's
yeah,
house.
yeah.
That card's my enemy, but I'm not going to tell the story. It takes way too much time. Oh, I'm not sure about bidding.
I want to get this Tarmogoyf
Yeah,
bigger. Was my thought process.
I guess. I think it's kind of nice to draw that Unholy Heat, though.
Yeah. I just figured I was going to expressive iteration next turn, and like maybe I undervalued the removal.
I think basically the things that matter in this matchup are drawing removal threats and card draw spells. So I guess that's like
Yeah.
most of your deck, but drawing them the correct balance is correct, is what is necessary, and you don't have a removal spell currently. So that's why
Mhm.
I'm inclined to keep it. Also, back to that point real quick. You literally have Wrenn plus Fable, right?
Uh, what was the question? I have
Oh,
Wrenn plus Fable.
you already have Wrenn
Yeah.
plus Fable, so like getting rid of a like milling, not drawing the removal spell, I think is going to cost you more often than like saying, okay, I'm going to cast a card draw spell next turn, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think it's just kind of a vision of what is your scarce resource. Your scarce resource is most likely removal, because
Yeah.
if you find a removal spell, that makes it a lot more comfortable to like do everything else you need to do, because you're going to see like 8 to 10 cards over the next few turns just with your hand, right?
Mhm.
So they did discard 2 griefs, but they're not scam. Interesting.
I don't think so. I didn't.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering.
It seems hard to play. Like, I don't really see the upside of playing grief without the scam component, I guess, right?
Maybe. I mean, maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe I mislabeled it. It did not play out like a scam deck. I'll say that at least.
I
I
mean,
like how against most of my matches played as a
right.
deck.
I mean, Shizo is a weird one sometimes because it does get affected by Blood Moon, but Shizo plus Ragvan's obviously great. Well, maybe great's a stretch, but it's a
Eh.
thing. Hmm.
Here's.
I,
I
I
wasn't
think.
really sure what the best play is.
Well, I think I would probably breach to use Unholy Heat to kill Voidwalker.
You just use it like a
Yeah,
big
just like a
Snapcaster.
Snapcaster Mage. Yeah.
Hmm. I guess when do you feel like you know when that's what the game is about and using the
Well,
breaches in that way, I guess?
the problem is if you don't remove Voidwalker, like, how is your breach going to do anything more than that, right?
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing is, like, I just think the Voidwalker recasting the Tarmogoyf might also be a huge issue. Like, I just want to remove that thing ASAP. So I don't think it's like. I agree that's not always clear cut, but I think here it's pretty clear cut. Mostly because it's hard for your breach to get better with the Voidwalker out.
Yeah. Hmm.
And if I were going to do that, I would probably not even risk the EI, because the catastrophe is if you don't hit a land, then you can't do that play anymore, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, I don't think this really goes well for you on average if you do this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I struggle to find the lines where it's like particularly really good to use breach like Snapcaster is part of my
Just
problem.
I think it's probably easier if you just tell yourself, I can always play this as Snapcaster Mage. Just
Hmm.
I think you like probably just have to verbalize it, probably.
Yeah.
I've cast a lot of Yawgmoth's Wills for just one land in Vintage, so like I mean, I know the feeling essentially because you would rather not do that because Yogg Will is like this super busted card, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do to have a chance.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's something like the high level knowing like what the
Mm,
game is going down to,
mhm.
like something that I don't always feel like I fully understand. And now this Underworld Breach is really awkward because
Well, yeah,
I
because
pulled the land out. Yeah.
that's the other thing. Um, Also, our mana doesn't work anymore, but that's now it's going to be kind of tough to win. I think. For what it's worth, it does look like scam to me, minus the Shizo, but I would seriously question if you even want to play that land out. By the way, are we on 1x? I think we are
Thought
probably good.
yeah,
Yeah.
I reset it
Well,
and I think it went back. Yeah.
whenever you reopen the program, I think it just
Yeah. Yeah.
resets.
I think they mess up. They take the right card, but then they cast it with their Douthie, and I think they do some weird. They just like cast Season Pyromancer only. I think, which is like good, but I felt like they could have done something way better.
I think I wouldn't even cast the Breach this turn. I think you're close to dead from lightning bolts to it, right?
Yeah.
I guess the downside is if you find a red removal spell, it gets really awkward for them. So I guess that's what they're working out, what they can cast. They can cast Ragavan Pyro, right? That actually
Yeah.
seems pretty good to me, honestly. Because they literally have 0 cards in hand, so like the Pyro drawing 2 cards for free is like pretty appealing.
I just felt very underwhelming, I guess, when they did it.
I did enjoy that there's a Castle Locthwain in their Blood Moon deck.
Sorry, they what was the last? Oh, they bolted. Yeah, they bolted my flipped Fable.
When we drew Tarmogoyf, and we get to just start discarding stuff, and now everything's looking a lot
Well,
better.
yeah, that's why like Fable looks like
Yeah,
really
okay.
good in this deck a lot of the time.
Well, I think it was them banning their own Voidwalker that kind of
I mean,
allowed all of this.
it
And also,
definitely helps.
Gigantha is so good versus them. Like, it's kind of funny because it doesn't seem like a good card, but it is actually really good versus them. Look at all of those void counters on things. There's so many void counters. Yeah, I think it's okay to upkeep it. It looks like that's what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
I guess they were just concerned about closing on you before you got out of that situation, but it seems to have backfired a lot.
Yeah.
Tarmogoyf claims another victim.
Tarmogoyf, I think it's good. I think like the thing way I think about this deck is like Zoomer Jund made a
Mm-hmm.
lot of sense in what it was trying to do, but like the black cards kind of suck. And it feels like
Mm-hmm.
this is my attempt to be like
Mm-hmm.
even more modern version of that, where you just play the good cards instead of like Jund.
That's fair.
That's how I think about it,
I
I guess.
this is the one matchup where I would somehow want to have Fury and Companion Gigantho based on your current construction, but it's impossible, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
Also, like Saga is so insane in the games where you don't get Blood Moon, then it like sucks in the games where you do get Blood Moon. My
Yeah.
suspicion is Aether Spell Bomb's not very good versus some, for what it's worth.
I was at the time semi worried about being scammed, and it felt like it was an okay hedge against that. But yeah, maybe it's not that good.
I think
Maybe
the
I mean like
game's
seeing how the game played
yeah.
out, like Shadow Spear is probably just better. But
Well, I don't really want Shadow Spear versus them either because I think how the games play out is they try to kill all of your stuff or like make sure you don't have no creatures. So Shadow Spear is a bad draw then.
mm-hmm.
Like I'm generally pretty low on
Yeah.
equipment versus decks that have like a ton of removal or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
it used to be the case that I didn't really like equipment in Legacy versus like removal heavy decks as well, so I just wouldn't even bother. Um, the same thing sort of applies. That also applies to my mentality in Cube as well. Like I just, if I think all my stuff's going to be dead, I think equipment's like worthless.
Yeah.
All right, so you end up cutting it.
I'm on one breach. I don't know how I feel about that, but I just thought it's a good way to die with too many of them. But like the upside, I mean, if they have Blood Moon, this Saga's doing nothing anyway.
That's kind of interesting. I think the way I would actually think about it is, am I going to cast Iteration next turn to protect it from discard? And I think I probably would.
Interesting. Okay. Really?
Yeah. Because that also does have the upside of playing around Blood Moon for your land as well.
Well, so they went Ragavan, Thoughtseize, go, and took the Ragavan. If they had a second Thoughtseize or a discard, wouldn't they just
Yeah,
try
but
to DPI them?
they can always top deck another
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
sure. I guess, yeah. Although I should definitely. Well, I thought no matter what I could have, a Thoughtseize effect would take EI over basically anything.
I mean, it's not unreasonable to take Ragavan if you literally don't have. Wait, what did they take? They took Ragavan and
They took
pushed your.
Ragavan, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So basically, I think they were afraid of. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to verbalize, but I think this would have worked out slightly better in this scenario because you would have EI'd the previous turn. I mean, I guess you have two constructs, but I kind of feel like it's easy for them to kill all of the constructs and not even care that much.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they don't kill the constructs and die, then in which case your play does look a lot better.
Yeah, getting this haywire might I think makes sense, but there's one card they have on the top of their deck which I didn't play around, which is pretty
Hmm.
bad.
It's a really good Fury for them.
I thankfully they're have nothing left in hand.
Yeah, they have nothing left. I mean, I think attacking is actually good for them because it's so hard for them to win if you just draw anything. Like, what if they just drew? If you just drew multiple for Fury? Oh, that's cute. I bet their last card's a land.
Yeah.
It's so hard for it to be anything but a land or a Thoughtseize. All right. Um. So I think the major takeaways are we should get this fourth Tarmogoyf into the deck, pretty much.
Hmm.
I'm still thinking about the Fury versus Gigantha thing, of course. But I don't know, the deck seems to work, like it's reasonable. Um can I honestly say it's better than like another like deck in this vein? I'm not sure. That's like harder to suss out, you know.
Yeah. I'm
Uh
pretty up in the air on what's I even think is the best Underworld Breach fair deck, or even unfair.
right. And the other question is I still don't know about these mana leaks is what I'm going to say. Like I'll probably continue to say it. Um yeah, I it's just hard to tell if that's actually the thing you want to have in your deck because of the curve and how the games play out.
Yeah. I didn't really draw them that much that late to really see them.
It's kind of hard because it's a two of, so you're not going to draw them that often. Like, and also like I feel like a lot of the times by the time you're casting Expressive Iteration, you're more inclined not to take it because you're already at a point where like the game's past Mana Week being a good card to draw.
Yeah.
So my suspicion is it probably what's the best way of putting it? I think it's okay to have one, but I'm not sure if you actually want two in your deck as well. I don't know. It is definitely a weird one to think about in the deck. I guess
I mean,
that was a lot of words to say. I'm not sure about that card. I suppose.
yeah. I'm not really sure on the math to know on how you go from 2 to 1 being the right answer on Mana Leak, but
Well, I know how the math works on that, which is if you literally don't want to draw a second copy of card, you just put one in your deck. Like
I
I'm being sort of ironic, but I'm also being a little bit. It's like actually the truth.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I still want to play the fourth Unholy Heat as well, like just because that card is so insane on rate.
Yeah. I mean, if that's like really it, then it seems really straightforward to cut the mana legs for the fourth Goyf and the fourth Heat. But
Yeah, and I'm gonna push for cutting this Spire Bluff and Arid Mesa for two appropriate
well,
lands
if
that.
Mana Leak goes, then I definitely don't want the Spiral Bluff. But if Mana Leak goes, like I really just don't want the island, right?
Right. No, I think it's fine to cut Canal for just or Canal and Mesa, maybe just for like a misty rainforest and some other land.
Yeah. That's just the mana base is so painful. That was kind of what I was like, trying to think about. I mean, like I don't know how embarrassing it is to play. Like, should I be playing X number of Copperline Gorges, or is that's just
No, I think
same
that's too
issues, right?
bad. That has the same issue as Spire Bluff Canal, where if you draw it later, because there's only one copy in your deck, that it's kind of inconvenient. I'm kind of just I'm lower on the fast lands in this type of deck than I think most
Hmm.
people are. because I think it's not great. I don't know. Basically, the other thing is, and this is just a Wrenn and Six specific thing, I think just having, like, it's nice to have 10 fetch lands, if possible, for Wrenn and Six. Obviously,
Mhm.
like, 9 is close. I think 8 is the bare minimum. Any less than that, like, then Wrenn just stops working to do what you want to do, which is, like, hit all of your land drops.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically I think the points we made before from earlier still stand, and I guess you'll get a few more games in, and I don't know. The Fury Gigantha thing versus Rakdos still bothers me. I don't know the solution.
Yeah. I mean, there the sideboard slots are really tight, so
Mm-hmm.
like Gigantha doesn't feel like if I could have more sideboard slots, I'd be pretty happy about it. But also like Gigantha is actually really good in this deck because you hit
Mm-hmm.
all your land drops and you typically do get to play it out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there is a best solution, I guess is where I'm at. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, I think just to wrap it up, just a reminder of what I think and what you probably should think about is mana leak, Y/N, what to replace it for if you end up cutting it, mana base, Spire Bluff Canal, Arid Mesa, question mark, Misty Rainforest. Um, Also, Flusterstorm becoming Spell Pierce / Invasive Surgery. I think, in my mind, it's pretty easy to see that that's a
Mm,
good thing to do. Maybe you'll discover some other matchup where you'd rather have Flusterstorm. So,
hmm.
those are the key points, I think, to summarize.
Yeah. Any gameplay key points outside? Definitely the big one to me is being okay with Underworld Breach being either a Snapcaster or the 4 to 5 cost spell
Hmm.
and making decisions.
I think it's just in this deck with Mishra's Bauble, it's a little bit different than a lot of other decks that play Mishra's Bauble. Like when you saw the Fable, I think you were just priced into keeping it.
Hmm.
But that's because you have to imagine like what your role was in the matchup versus uh
Hmm.
that deck, which is you need to get the thing going, you need to start attacking and get the ball rolling
Hmm.
because waiting around is bad for you. So
Okay.
I think that's just like a classic Jund or Fairies thing, which is know which side of it you're on. I
Yeah.
think that can actually apply sometimes weirdly in the standard Grixis mirrors, where someone's the beatdown and the other person's not. And identifying you are the beatdown makes it a lot easier for you to play the game. You know,
Right.
just I think role assessment is important when you play a mid-rangey deck like this one.
Yeah. I definitely feel like for some reason role assessment in modern is kind of difficult for me compared to the other formats.
Yeah, for me personally, I think it all stems from playing like limited or drafts forever because like the rule is constantly changing based on top decks. Um, yeah, I think you after you make those changes, maybe you just get a few more weeks in and see if the deck still feels good, and if there are other issues, like we can probably address them at some other point.
Hmm.
Um, I would like to thank you for agreeing to stream it. Obviously, I didn't actually ask you to stream it personally, but definitely do appreciate it. And if you all want to check out Samantha's stuff, you can find her at it's Sam Rose Murphy, right?
On Twitter, yeah.
Yeah, Sam Rose Murphy on Twitter and Samantha_Murphy on Twitch. I think she'll be trying this deck a bit more as well, correct?
Yeah, I'm finding it fun. I'm
Mhm.
like the Fair Breach, and I've been enjoying the Teamer version, so I'm probably going to keep working on it.
All right, chat. Well, there you have it. I think that's about going to wrap it up. And
Hmm.
if people like Booster Draft, I might do one of those afterwards. So, see you all in a few minutes.